right to sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress. Welcome to SOUQ News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, SOUQ News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. SOUQ News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, SOUQ News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. SOUQ News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
Hello and welcome to SOUQ Pulse. We're here and we are glad that you're on the underside. You've always watched, you've always tuned in, you've always been that particular hand we hold on to when we talk, when we start our discussion, you're there and you follow us. We want to say thank you. It's SOUQ Pulse where we look at businesses as it affects not just government but ordinary people. We look at loans, giving, taking. We look at economies of nation. We look at relationships as it affects not just banks in nations, but also international donors, donor agencies, multilateral organizations, the giving, the taking, loans, those that have come short, those that are paying back, those that can't pay back. Who exactly is telling the truth? Who is making the profit? We get to talk about this on SOUQ Pulse, and we always tell you as it is, never be quiet. We say Africa rising. We look at Asia, we look at policies that is taking them forward. Mistakes they've made, I think that's the best place to look and learn. On SOUQ Pulse, we try our best and keep the conversation going. My name is Chuks, John-Rogers Chuks, and I'm privileged to have Mr. Sam on this beautiful first day of the week. You're welcome, sir.
My pleasure, Chuks.
Thank you very much. Today is one that we will get to talk something that is affecting everybody, not just like everybody. Right now in Africa, if we look at the western part of Africa, we've been having a heat wave. It's hitting everybody, and people are complaining, environment this, environment that. So that takes us back to where the world is heading to, where everyone is talking about. And what we're looking at green energy. But we're not looking at green energy as just green energy or transition to green energy. We are looking at the business of green energy. Like, seriously, the business of green energy. We always tell you here that it is a race. The arms race have come and gone. The race to the moon has come and gone. We are right now in this particular race. And who is moving? Who is taking? Who is shaking? And who are the paupers in this particular race? And that's what we'll be talking about today. People will be wondering about saying green economy. What are we talking about green economy? Everybody's looking at sustainability, ability to make sure that we take less and emit less from the earth. Taxation is coming on CO2 being emitted. Countries are taking it, countries are saying no. However policy they decide to adopt. But one thing we know for sure is that technologies are being developed. Machinery is moving. Power consumption is trying to change. Transportation is changing. Good governance is also part of green economy, if you're not aware. A whole lot is happening. And there is this data that by 2030, that is just 6 years from now, this particular economy will have gobbled well over 13 trillion. 13 trillion. So we are now asking ourselves, out of this money, where is Africa going to come in? Yes, the environment needs to be taken care of, mind you. Yes, we are 100% sure. But we are looking at it from this other side. Service providing, technology providing, goods and service providing. For this particular transition, where is Africa going to play? So who are the movers? Who are the shakers? Who are the takers? And who are the paupers? You're welcome, sir.
My pleasure, Chris.
Thank you very much. Once people talk about transition and carbon emission, the first thing that comes to mind is the COP28, last one was 28. We look at gathering of heads of state and everybody telling each person that you should emit less, and Africa being the one that everybody is telling to emit less, as if Africa is emitting more. What do you have? So let's start from that particular aspect of it. Yes, there's climate change. Yes, we're not arguing about that. Is Africa emitting as much as the technologically advanced nations?
No. If you, from the surface of the discussion, Africa is emitting less of what industrial society emits. But climate change and green economy or green energy or renewable energy has become a buzzword in international relation. Over the past years, the timeline for some of these framework is 2030, which is not too far away from now. The West essentially has been mounting financing climate change in Africa. To a very large extent, that financing has not come. Even where the report shows that they are the greatest polluter, but the international politics is focusing more on the global south or the developing country. And to what extent can we bridge the gap in terms of climate change financing? These are some of the core issues that we'll be able to discuss. But then there's a business around the green economy. To what extent can we sustain the green economy, moving away in terms of transitioning to low carbon energy production across the globe? But then there's a political aspect of it, particularly outside Africa. The last conference they had in Dubai spoke to some of the critical issues of climate change financing. But then some of those promises has not been realized by most African states. But then maybe as we progress to the terminal date in terms of the initiative, in terms of the timeline to move away from fossil fuel in particular, to save the ozone layer from the depletion that has happened as a result of pollution from industrial countries, remain to be seen as we progress this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we progress, I want to bring you back. You brought up the issue of the climate change financing. Now, let's look at it from this other angle. If you want to develop a market, what do? You go source your market. If possible, you build your market. Is it not? Then you go back. Then you now bring your goods and services, and your market is buying. Why? Because your market now becomes where every other person brings his goods and services. If we are sitting and waiting for the West to tell us and finance this particular project, this particular race, climate change financing, what are they doing? They are turning Africa to a market. And when they finish building the market, every product most product that will be used, that is part of this business, will come from there. And what will happen? Africa will buy. This is exactly what has happened with the arms race. We end up buying. We have not developed anything of ours. That is the same way we are running to right now. I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from. Now, this is the same thing. Before we now start talking about specifics, is it not the same mistakes our leaders are making because somebody somewhere is dangling some millions or let's say billions of dollars that we are not even sure of and saying, calling it a name, climate change financing. So sit, relax, we'll finance for you. Then later, what happens when the transition starts?
I think for me, the government, particularly in Africa, must be up and doing, particularly to some of the convention and agreement they sign on climate change, and find a way to put framework in place in order to forestall some of the negative impact that will come from the West, using Africa as a dumping ground. So there are some countries in Africa already, they have a very strong policy framework in trying to see when they bring those products, they must find a way to see how sustainable those products will be. So they pay for those items so that they are degradable over a period of time. If we are committed to reducing some of those items that are likely to be dumped here, then I think we'll be making a good head start in terms of the transitioning. But then our environment is equally favorable to us in terms of the abundance of renewable energy that is domiciled with us as Africans. So the government too must find a way beyond the financing that is promised from the West to see how we can develop infrastructure using sun, which we are blessed with abundantly, using composite items that are generated from waste either in the farm and all that. Maybe this will quickly help us. But the greatest polluters, which is the industrial West and some of the countries from the East, must find a way not to pollute the rest of the world with high-driven carbon items that are inimical to African progress. So there must be a balance in terms of financing, in terms of the political will to drive the process. Then government must invest in renewable energy so that the negative impact in the long run does not affect Africa. So sustainability, which is key element in terms of not mortgaging the present so that the future can do well, must be taken cognizance of by various government and civil society actors so that we help to sustain green economy.
Okay. Now, when we look at green economy, everyone looks and thinks that is something that is like this. You snap your finger and you're there. Their way of life is different from our way of life. What they push into the atmosphere, the amount of CO2 they push into the atmosphere can't be compared to what we push into the atmosphere. And now, some other climes have pushed this for decades, some for centuries. And right now, yes, the environment is suffering. Yes, we 100% agree. We are seeing pollution at a rate that we've never seen before. We've seen climate change affect a whole lot of people. We've seen desertification. We've seen right close to us here, Lake Chad drying up. We've seen rises in ocean levels. We've seen flooding like never before. We've seen heat waves. Yes, we 100% agree. Now, when it comes to problems and solution, that is where money comes in, because whoever is finding the solution to a problem is making money in one way or the other. Be it sickness, you're making money. Even in death, you're making money. Where can Africa start plugging in this solution? Because if we wait, it will still go the same way it's keep going around. Where do you think Africa should start plugging in? Should it be in research? Should it be in the raw materials that will most likely will be used for byproducts, for production of green energy materials? Where should Africa start plugging in? Let's not go to leadership first, because that needs a full overhaul.
From our own perspective, we are gifted in Africa. So first is to protect the environment by making the environment green. Government must make a deliberate policy in terms of tree planting so that we can keep the environment green. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, some of this renewable energy that we are blessed with, we need to quickly exploit them, not waiting for the West to even provide some of the financing that they have promised. So that's very critical. If we're able to sustain the green environment, that is depleting, then government, in addition to what the West has promised, must find a way to invest even in social housing. This horizontal development that is depleting the environment must be re-engineered in Africa, where we can do some form of vertical housing, social loan, where the houses go up so that we can green the environment. That will help us in a sustainable manner to sustain the ecosystem that is affected by the impact or the negative impact of hydrocarbon, and we'll focus more on low carbon emission energy. That again will help us to sustain the environment so that we don't mortgage the future generation.
Okay, good. Let's now break this down a bit. Let's look at the 6 main sectors for the green economy. We're looking at renewable energy. We're looking at green building. We're looking at sustainable transport, water management, waste management, land management. You've spoken a bit on land management, building. You've spoken a bit on renewable energy. Now, we are looking at it from this perspective, the business in this. Because whether we like it or not, that is what the West and Asia is coming with. Now, some years back, 2010 to be precise, the Bretton Woods institutions came out on their own and instituted a policy to not just loan, but to back up their words with money to any country that is following their particular, on this particular green economy, which tells me that there is profit to be made. They don't put their money where they know there is no profit. Let's come back home. Let's start individually. Renewable energy. Nigeria, for example, our major source of energy has been hydro. Then we have gas turbines right now. We are producing 4,000 plus megawatts. We need to get to nothing less than 40,000 megawatts to even feel the impact for industry. We have to get industrialized. At what point in time do you think we can? At what point in time do you think we can say, okay, we have gas that we can use. Okay, now let's start looking for other sources. When the gas plants that we have, we've not been able to, the gas plants, we've not been able to power them. Should we start listening to the West?
Well, the West has its own narrative and conversation. What I want to focus on in this discourse is from the point of view of what you call circular economy, where waste to wealth. So there are certain elements within the climate change and climate problem challenges where Africa is endowed with certain elements. So what I think we should focus on is the approach of the circular economy, where we focus on how we can use the ways that is developed to power renewable energy. And the options are enormous. Then gas, we are blessed with high level of gas deposit. So we should move away gradually in terms of the transitioning to see how we can use gas to generate electricity. I talked about the other renewable energies.
The renewable energy is expensive.
No, it's expensive in the short run,
yes,
but in the long run,
exactly.
in terms of sustainability,
in the short run,
yeah, it looks expensive, but in the long term, in terms of
to fund it,
its ability to sustain the ecosystem and the environment, then we need to fund that deliberately, and there are cheap source of renewable energy that we can tap on. We have the wind, okay. We have the ocean, that's the water, then we have composite, some of the waste that's generated from the farm. But then, do we really have the focus and the political will to drive this process to its logical fruition? Those are the key conversations that we must sustain. Why waiting for the West to make its commitment, which are to a very large extent are political, in my view.
Do they owe us that commitment?
They owe us that commitment because if you look at the ecosystem that has been depleted, they are the worst culprits They actually call the greatest polluter. Therefore,
do they owe Africa?
Therefore,
or
they owe the
world?
world, and Africa is part of the world. So they need to make those commitments in terms of carbon financing that they have made commitment to, and we must drive that process. And equally at home, we must put certain elements in place in terms of regulatory framework, that each item that comes, if you do electronic manufacturing that was supposed to last for 10, 15, 20 years, there must be items for a country to degrade those items. So they must pay for those things upfront as those equipment or machines are coming into Africa. So it must be holistic. We have what it takes, but then while they were telling us that we need to finance on the options that you just talked about, they are equally powering their systems with deposit of coal. So we should not blind our eye to that. At home, we must equally focus on those energy sources that may not be renewable in the short run to power electricity, so that as we do that, our transitioning becomes very easy when we invest on the other sector. Those are my strong views in terms of how we can take advantage. The financing, to a very large, is political, but those promises that have been made, COP26, COP28, some of the commitments have not been brought to the table. So, but the Ministry of Environment has some regulatory framework in place. To what extent they can drive those processes? How can they find some of these manufacturing companies that the threshold in terms of how they pollute the environment has not been respected?
That's in Africa.
In Africa.
Okay. Now let's look at the projection. On paper, projection for transition is 2050. If we do some simple arithmetics, that's like 26 years from now. Okay, good. In 26 years, can Africa get up to 80% power supply, not just for individual homes, for industries? In 26 years, can Africa become industrialized? In 26 years, can Africa feed herself? I'm looking at the business side of it. Now, if we say, okay, let's do away with hydrocarbons and carbon sources, where is Africa going to start making that money? Because we need the money in the first place to build those industries. We need the money in the first place to start those research. We need that money in the first place, either to buy the technology or, like I say, steal it. But right now, we don't have it. In 26 years, do you see, if we start transitioning the way the narrative is going, do you think or see it working?
Yes, it's possible. 26 years is a long time to come. It has to do with leadership. It has to do with commitment to climate action promises that have been made. Number one, some countries within Africa, in terms of their energy consumption, they've made some remarkable stride in terms of, there are countries even within Africa where energy source in terms of consumption in household is over 80-something%. And there are countries within Africa that want to drive that process at the end of 2024 to almost 100% and above. So you need that political leadership to drive that process. Then the investment, the government must be deliberate in investing in that sector so that we can drive that process of renewable energy while we still take some element from the hydrocarbon, because the West that is pushing us so rigorously in that direction are equally relying on hydrocarbon to power their energy for the betterment of their citizens. So African leadership must not just close their eye when they go into some of these summits after the big language and diplomatic talk. What can we do back home? So we are gifted in terms of, so another clamor that we must initiate is that the primary products that we produce here, let the manufacturing equally take place so we can generate some of those revenue. You don't need to go outside completely. The technology is there. we can transfer that technology as well. You can take those skills that will enable some people within Nigeria or Africa to develop in that trajectory that will benefit people in terms of sustainability of green economy.
Okay. This line, we are coming back to it. But before we do that, we'll go on a break. Don't go anywhere. We are getting green all over.
The Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, SOUQ Enlightenment.
Paul, so we're here and we're looking at the business of green economy. We're looking at the movers, we're looking at the takers. When you're just looking at, we're also asking who is shaking and who are the paupers in this particular race. Yes, that is what it is. It is a race. Before we went on the break, Mr. Sam was analyzing and telling us about majorly renewable energy and what role Africa can play and where you think we should play. Now, let me read something for you. An estimated 1.248 trillion has been invested in solar, wind, geothermal, ocean hydro, and other green sectors since 2007. Now, this particular data is coming from the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. Now, this begs me to ask, of this lot, how much do you think, what percentage of this came to Africa? Now, of that percentage that came to Africa, how much percentage of it, of the product that were used, were made in Africa? That is where the money is. It's just like the bank giving you loan, and whatever the goods you're going to buy, you're going back to the bank to buy it.
No, I don't think it's as simplistic as that. If you disaggregate the figure that you just read out across the globe, there are certain partnership and collaboration with various African governments, United Nations Environment Program, with the Ministry of Environment, in Nigeria in particular, had very serious initiative that has impacted on the environment and the environmental ecosystem. So that we had a reasonable share of that money across the globe in terms of supporting research, in terms of pushing for alternative energy. Within Nigeria, there are certain investments that were made in solar energy.
Okay, let me bring you back. Let me bring back to this. Yeah. Now, before the last administration in Nigeria left, there was a windmill farm somewhere in Katsina. There was also a mini grid somewhere in Bayelsa, and there was another mini grid somewhere in Nasarawa. Now let me break it down. Of all these projects, aside maybe the cable, maybe Nigerian wires produced, every other thing that was used was imported. That is where I'm going to. So where is the business? Where is Africa sticking its hands? Where is Africa staying? We are playing here. We don't have industries making solar panels. What we have are industries assembling solar panels. This is where we are heading to. So where on this particular renewable energy side of it, where can we come in?
No, the point is that it will be very difficult to dismiss that solar panels are not manufactured in Africa.
Assembled.
Whatever name you call it in terms of manufacturing. The world does not live in isolation. So certain elements of that is a product of Africa. Lithium, which is the basic raw material for the production of batteries, which are part of the components for solar energy, is domiciled in Africa. So okay. The percentage of
at that point in time.
No,
okay.
No, just a moment.
Go ahead.
The point is that to what extent is the exploitation of lithium as a resource from Africa? What is the volume of investment that has been made in the exploitation, the processing, and the refining? To what extent are those batteries equally assembled? And I think there's a big call from the African Union some 3 years ago that for us to maximize the opportunity in terms of these raw materials, that this battery manufacturing company must be situated close to the source of raw material. To that extent,
has that call been heeded?
No, it is in some places. There are some African countries where lithium is being manufactured. The battery components are done with some Chinese company. I can't recall offhand now, as I discussed here. But
so you see us playing in that particular.
We're already playing.
Okay.
The degree to which we play currently may not be at the level which you expect. But then, and that's why I made
do you think we should, just the way the West take it and hold it to their chest, we on this other side can also take that and hold it to our chest? No lithium is living here except 90% or 80% or 70% is processed and made here.
That is a call. That is a call. And that's why I talk about responsible leadership, authentic leadership that can drive those processes. And we have some leaders within Africa that have formed new relationship in the way that their minerals can be exploited. So if we have that kind of leadership that can drive that process, we're a major player. But some of these items you talk about, Africans still remain a major provider of primary commodity for the industrial world. But the argument is that to what extent can we bring this technology back home so that it can benefit the people? So if you look at the value chain, it's not that we're completely out, but the level at which we should play should scale up so that we're at par with the West in terms of the investment, the potential, sustainability, whether business sustainability, environmental sustainability, so that we can justify the green economy from all perspectives.
Okay, let's look at another sector, the green building. Now, let me take for example here in Nigeria, just like you said, most times we don't build up. Most times we just put in all the cement we can, mix up those blocks, concrete everywhere, and voila, the building is there. How can we start getting creative with our buildings? how can we start having those buildings that are self-sufficient, not expensive?
I think the challenge here is what I always call mind engineering. We are so wired to think that everything that comes from the West is authentic, is more fashionable. We have the Nigerian Building Research Center that has developed climate-friendly housing units that are not being patronized. You have houses that are made from clay. So these houses are environmentally friendly. We need to improve equally on the vertical social housing that I talked about, rather this horizontal that takes plenty space, so that we can have a green environment, green garden, green area that will help to protect the environment. So
before you go on, let's dwell a bit more on the housing unit you talked about with clay.
Yes.
And the straw, the one from the institute.
Yes.
Now
there are a lot of designs that are cheap in terms of cost, and
the raw material.
And the raw materials are within the environment, and they are environmentally friendly. That doesn't really have negative impact on the environment, as it were. So if we focus on this housing option that are climate friendly, then that will help us to stay on the curve in terms of sustaining the green economy that we're talking about. So it's important that government must focus on this to reduce the massive investment where the level of exposure to climate change is higher than using natural sources that abound in Africa. And you have a prototype of those houses all over the place. Okay.
There is this some years back when the 5G network came, if you remember very well. The US, America, had a problem with Hawaii. And what was the issue? They didn't want that particular company, in quote, that country, to be the first to roll out the 5G in the West. And they did everything possible. Everything possible. Now, where and when can Africa start playing? Because that is where I am heading to. When can we also, we might not play to that level, but we should be able to also say we are bringing this to the market. Let's take, for example, the building you are talking about. For most people that are, you might not really understand, a lot of those beautiful houses you see in America, they are wood. They are wooden houses. But you see them and you think it's all, no, a lot of them are wooden houses. That's why when you have a fire outbreak, like in some of those northern states, an entire neighborhood is gone. But here we spend more, with more energy to build, whereas the example you gave is far better, more sustainable, way more cheaper and more healthy than what we currently build. But thanks to advertorials and what you see every day on the screen, you think that this big stone house is better. Where can we start changing those mindsets?
That is what I call mind engineering. As a people, as a collective, as Africans, as Nigerians, we must constantly look inward to a way to sustaining our environment and not just consuming what comes from the West. That's on the one hand. Number two, government must equally find a way. There's a new initiative by the federal government in terms of building about 9,000 units of house for the lifespan of this administration. What is the component of the research from the Nigerian Building Research Institute? What is the component of the houses that are eco-friendly, environmental friendly, that are cheaper to build? That's another way we can sustain the green economy. So these 9,000 houses, I want to see the mix of with both blocks, yes, okay, and the ones from the clay that are designed from the environment, which are cheaper to access, to build. So the government has the responsibility to canvass that element so that we can make some savings rather than going the other way. On the other hand, we must focus on the circular economy. As we are generating waste from the farms, from the industry, we must sustain that circular economy in terms of the value chain that can turn those...
The waste to stock feed.
Yes, so we can get them. Even generating water, potable water from the waste.
Okay.
There are factories,
before
I don't want to mention it because of advertising. There's a factory in Lagos that is generating water that they use within the company from the waste. It goes through a cleaning process and the water comes back for use. That's a way. And most of the equipment in that factory are environmentally friendly. They have done away with those heavy polluting machinery. And when you go into that place, you find that as if manufacturing is not going on in those environments. So these are things we need to encourage. Okay.
Now let's look at the third one. We'll breeze the last two very fast. Let's look at sustainable transport. Now we see something different in this climb. I always say it as this: you turn on your TV and you see all manner of flashy cars, EVs, electric vehicles. Right now, we don't have any plant that manufactures electric vehicles, but we can assemble. When can African countries start saying, hey, it must not be flashy, we have to start somewhere? That has started somewhere, making tractors. Today they are making vehicles. Can we start assembling our own modes and means of transport and say, let us patronize it, and not wait for the EVs from outside Africa?
I think the first one is to have an urbanization policy that even sustain a public transportation, a social public transportation that reduce the number of cars
on the road.
On the road. That's another way of saving the environment. So where you have an ecosystem, a public transportation system that reduces the number of cars on the road. On the other hand, there are countries even within Africa that are already championing vehicles that are driven by what do you call it now?
EV, electric vehicles.
Electric vehicle. So to what extent?
These same batteries.
Yes.
Same lithium batteries.
Oh yeah, lithium batteries. So you can tie those kind of manufacturing into the raw material. So okay, we manufacture lithium. For you to take advantage of these manufacturing processes, please can you cite electric manufacturing vehicle within this environment? If those policy regime are there, it will help to improve on the green economy. So but public transportation fundamentally has to change with urbanization, urban policy, where there's a massive investment in public transportation. So the volume of the current cars that are polluting the environment will not be on the road.
Okay. Let's talk a bit on water management. Let's talk a bit on water management. We on this, Africans generally, we look at water as a blessing. It's just there. Use it the way you please. But most people don't understand that water is also a resource. There are places that you don't have water. There are countries that 70% of the land is a desert. There are countries that are landlocked. Our neighbors not far from here are landlocked. So for countries that have water, how or what advice will you give them on not just management, or being able to make the best of an economy out of their bodies of water?
First is to sustain a blue economy because water, whether they are ocean, whether they are lake, have a lot of resource in terms of fish and other aquatic life that are important. So one, you need to sustain that ecosystem that sustain the aquatic resource on the one hand. Two, you have access to the oscillation, that's the wavelength from the ocean and from the sea as a source of energy that you can deploy to power a kind of energy, generate power that will be sustainable, is cheaper, is cleaner. So beyond the preservation of the aquatic life, which is a resource, which is part of this green economy, that the fish resource and other aquatic are sustained so that they are not depleted on a sustainable manner. Two, to what extent can we use water resource beyond even hydroelectricity to power industry? So if we have a mix of these and develop some of these sub-national grid, not the national grid, and people are able to provide power within certain community, within certain environment, depending on the resource endowment of those community, that will help in terms of sustaining a green economy, and we will not depend on the West in terms of the promises which are becoming too political.
Promises that they use and get something back. Now, our time is almost up for the show. Now, let's go this way. We have a short period of time. We are not trying to catch up with anybody, but we have a short period of time to try and make sure that we become productive. And there's no better way of becoming productive than being able to acquire the skills, the talent, the technology, the training. Where should we start plugging in and start preparing both this generation and the one to come for green economy?
Okay, generally beyond even green economy, I canvass or advocate a better relationship between town and GAN, research institutions, universities, colleges and colleges of technology must find a way to put their research finding, not just research, evidence-based research finding into the marketplace so that people can exploit those research finding to the advantage of the local community. Number two, we must, if we don't have technology, we must find a way to get the knowledge elsewhere, where we can take those knowledge, like what China did when they closed their door to the West for a very long time. They went to copy those technology, and they practiced those technology, and those technology became part of them. So we need to do that as African. Then the skill set must constantly train people to acquire new skill sets in terms of artificial intelligence, machine tools that are beneficial to African. This technology may not be domiciled here, but these are technology that can be adopted if you have people that are interested in taking those technology. Advisedly, there are a lot of Africans who are playing very high in some of those sectors elsewhere. So the government should be able to put some money down and buy them with high level of reward system that can make them come back home so that they can develop that sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sam. It's always a pleasure having you here. Like we say, the time is short. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Yes. Now, remember, this is SOUQ Pulse, and here we always tell you as it is. This is a race, and whether you like it or not, everybody is on his own track, and Africa must run. We need to get productive. We have to get productive. We can't keep waiting and turning our own environment to an import-based environment. We must bring something to the marketplace. Acquire those skills. Don't wait and keep calling on the government. They won't be of any help if you don't stand up and count. So remember what we say. Never keep quiet. Never be silent. My name is Chuks, John-Rogers Chuks. See you tomorrow.
In the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress, welcome to SOUQ News, your source for business, economy, and development insight to drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, SOUQ News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. SOUQ News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, SOUQ News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. SOUQ News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.